Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Hank Hyatt, Senior Vice President of Economic Competitiveness at the Greenville Chamber. We're glad you're here with us today. We host these community matter discussions each and every week to connect you with local, state, and national leaders. You can find past recordings as well as upcoming community matters schedule at www.greenvillechamber.org. Before we get going today, a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all attendees should be on mute with their cameras turned off. And we'll take questions, and you can submit them through the chat feature throughout today's presentation. So, today's subject matter. We know that Greenville County Schools' back-to-school plan is probably of very great importance to our business community. So we've quickly added this topic this week so that you could hear the latest plan directly from the source. So we're very glad to be joined this afternoon by Dr. Scott Turner, who is Deputy Superintendent for Greenville County Schools. He has only been in this role since 2019, but brings more than 30 years of experience in education, including the last 15 as Superintendent of Spartanburg District 5. Also, Dr. Turner has recently served on Accelerate Ed, the statewide task force convened by the State Superintendent of Education, Molly Spearman, in response to COVID-19. So glad to have you with us, Dr. Turner. We also have with us today Whitney Hanna. Whitney is Greenville County Schools Coordinator of Community Collaboration and Institutional Advancement. She's a member of Greenville County Schools District Leadership Team, and Whitney works with the district administrators and schools to develop relationships with community partners, corporations, industry groups, nonprofits, and other organizations on behalf of the district for the benefit of student success. And she's been in that role for about 4.5 years or so. So first of all, welcome, Whitney. Welcome, Dr. Turner. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Hank. Thanks for having us. Let me just say on behalf of Dr. Royster, who could not be with us today, that we're extremely grateful for the Chamber and the partnership we have with you guys and all the work with our business partners, as well as we've gone through this since the middle of March. There have been a tremendous amount of support from the business community and partners in the community who've stepped up and ask us how they could help, where they could help, how they could communicate. It's really been a team effort with the whole community, so we're grateful for that.
Well, thank you. Y'all have always been there with the business community every step of the way, so we appreciate y'all's partnership as well. One reason we slotted the session in today, this week, is because there's an upcoming deadline for parents to apply for the virtual program if they want to go with that option for their students in the fall. I think the deadline is Monday the 27th, I think. Can you kind of share with us what options parents do have for the students for this fall and how decisions are being made related to what school will be like this fall? So Dr. Turner, Whitney, turn it over to you.
Yes, they do have the option. Monday is the deadline if they choose to be completely virtual, and we're asking them right now that they will be a one-year commitment. So if you choose to have a virtual program, you sign your student up. It will be much like, this is a new program for our K through 8 schools, but we've had virtual classes in our high schools for years. They, once they're there, they will have face-to-face instruction. No, I say face-to-face, online, where they will have live streamed instruction with their teachers every day. It will not be anything like what they saw in the spring. A lot of people think what we did in the spring is virtual learning or e-learning, and this is not what it's going to be. It's actually going to be rigorous. There will be new content provided daily. There will be assessments that are provided. Engagement of the student and between the student and the teacher. So it will look nothing like what parents and students experienced in the spring when we were shut down on a Sunday night and had to turn it around within 2 days to start that process.
Very good.
The one thing I would add about that too is if there's specific questions about the virtual program, we have an email address specifically set up about that at gcs virtual@greenville.k12.sc.us, where specific questions can be answered in detail about that, as we know parents are making an intense decision at that point.
And Hank, just one other thing, as of, I just got the numbers a few minutes ago, we have over 14,300 students who have so far signed up for the virtual program in Greenville County.
So that's a significant internal reallocation of resources, instructors, what have you. How is that going, and how any insight into that process?
That process is painful because, as you said, we're having to go school by school and look at, I've just looked at a list of schools. Our top school has over 33% of its students who've chosen to be virtual. So we will have to go in and reallocate teachers. We've asked, first of all, for teachers to apply to teach virtually, so they will be interviewed and hired to be virtual school teachers. But obviously, we may not have enough, so we're going to have to reallocate what we call FTEs, teaching allocation, FTEs from schools, brick and mortar, to the virtual program. So we're thinking we may need somewhere over 300 to 350 teachers to teach the online virtual program. And it is hard because schools are built around communities, and teachers know each other. They're friends with their fellow teachers. They get to know the students get to know the teachers. And so when you go into a school and you start removing teachers to say, we need you to come teach now because you've lost a third of your enrollment, we need you to come and teach virtually, that's not an easy process.
No, it is a very, very short time frame for y'all to figure out again that reallocation and everybody ramped up. So we again appreciate everything y'all are doing. And from my recollection from the fall, from the spring to this fall, the students will be in a regular structured setting, basically with a virtual school. They will have class times, class A, class B, class C, every day. So again, it's much more mimicking a regular school environment. Is that correct?
That's correct. They will have a period of time each day. It's almost like they walk through their daily schedule as if they were in the brick and mortar building, except they're doing it virtually with their teacher.
Okay. Was this the number 14,000? Was that about what you all expected, or is it above, below? Any idea at this point?
That number has been going up between 500 and 1,000 a day, and we really didn't know what to expect when we released this document that we're talking about today, which was released yesterday publicly. We didn't know if it would make it go up quicker, or if actually people would change their mind and say, okay, I can deal with that. I'll remove myself from virtual, and I would rather be in the traditional model or the hybrid, whatever we're in at the time. Right. But we continue to see it kind of creep up. I would not be surprised if we get close to 20,000 before Monday.
Have a total student body of
75,000.
Wow.
So when we sent out a parent survey initially this summer asking for feedback, it was, I don't remember the exact number, so approximately 45% that said they wanted to send their kids back, and another large percentage that wanted to, that were unsure, but we had 12% say that they certainly would not send back. So if you looked at that out of our 75,000 students, I mean, we're well above that 12% that expected not to come back originally. So for me, that number has been a little bit higher than I think we anticipated based off the the parent survey. Interesting.
So again, yesterday, you just mentioned this, Dr. Turner, y'all released the detailed reopening schools plan. So what kind of information is available in that plan, and what kind of questions are y'all getting from the public, from parents, from the business community related to the plan?
I think the most common questions, well, how will we determine, are we on a 0, or are we on a 1, are we on a 2, or are we on a 5? That is completely determined by the science and what is going on in Greenville County at the moment. So if you go to DHEC's website, they update their site weekly, and it shows by county 3 metrics. It shows the number of incidents, positive incidents per 100,000 individuals. It shows whether or not that trend is increasing or decreasing or plateauing. And it showed the third one, Whitney, you need to help me here. The 2-week trend and all of that. Is it going up or down? Since this came out, when I was part of Accelerate Ed Task Force, we came up with that metric of saying we wanted to have a high, medium, and low spread. Now, we're not geniuses. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We saw that from another state, and we thought it would work here in South Carolina as well. And finally, DHEC defined those levels of spread for our state. And now they're updating it weekly. And so that's what we're using to guide our decision making. So if you go to DHEC's website, you can find each county, and if it's within those 3 categories, and right now in Greenville County, we're high in all 3 categories. And so as we look at the 0, 1, 2 to 5 days, that's based on the level of spread in our county.
Mhm.
Let's say today, we know that we're high, high, high. So we would say we would probably be 0 days, which would be completely e-learning for everyone. If our community and our state steps up and cooperates, and this thing and the wearing of masks in public, and the numbers come down and we see it trending down, then we can begin to move. Our goal is to be 5 days a week face-to-face. That's where we want to be. And a lot of people question our motives about why we are not opening in that model, is because we don't feel it's safe at this time to put 25 students in a classroom with a teacher and an aide. A lot of our employees fall in high-risk categories. We've done surveys. And so right now, we just feel like following the science. This is our plan. Is it easy? No. Does it cause hardship for families? Yes. Does it cause childcare issues for families and workers and businesses? Yes. But we face those same obstacles as we are employers, because we've had our own teachers to say, even though that let's say we're on a 1 and your child's only coming 1 day a week, that teacher is there every day that week. So who's going to care for that teacher's child while she or he is there teaching every day that week? So we're getting the same issues for our employees as businesses are having with their employees. But at the end of the day, our goal is to be 5 days a week. Everyone wants to return to normalcy and have extracurricular activities, the athletics, the leadership programs, the fine arts, the performing arts. We just don't feel at this moment, based on DHEC and CDC guidelines, that it's safe to do that.
So school's been pushed back. The start date now is what day? Can you remind me?
The start date is August the 24th. And
August 24th.
the other thing that was added in there that came out yesterday was something called LEAP, L-E-A-P. There were 5 days that the state mandated every district offer before school begins for kindergarten through 8th grade. During those 5 days, we have invited, based on your chart that you have on the screen right now, so if you're a blue child, then you will come on that Monday. And you will meet your teacher, you will get your supplies, you will get your Chromebook. We have to do some assessments. Now people are going like, really, the first day back? These kids have been out since March, and you give them a test the first day they're back in the classroom? That's the legislature for you. The state has mandated we have to do that to try to gauge where we're starting in terms of learning and understanding at the academic level for our students. So those days will be starting on the 17th of that week.
Okay.
And again, that's only from kindergarten through 8th grade. It does not impact high school.
That's helpful. Thank you. That is very helpful.
One thing, Hank, I would add about the plan as well is we've gotten a lot of questions around what is really the benefit of the 1 day option. You know, people are kind of like, if you're not going to be there at least a couple of days a week, what is the purpose of that? And we see great benefit to even a minimal, of 1 day a week when it's safe to do that. There's a lot of reasons for it, but I'd say the top reasons are that teachers have the ability to form an in-person connection with their students, which we obviously know is going to be extremely beneficial. It would be best to do that 5 days a week, but at the minimum doing it at least 1. We can, when students are attending at least 1 day a week, we can provide access to athletics and other extracurriculars that are so important to students' development. And then, of course, it's the top of all of our minds is that even having the students 1 day in person allows us to truly assess a student's condition. So making sure that they are not being abused, neglected, or other trauma that we know is, while we're still working to be vigilant in our students, and have added some ways of doing that this fall. They excuse me, we know that seeing them in person will help greatly to do that as well.
Hank, let me kind of piggyback on what Whitney said. We have talked a lot this summer about social emotional learning and dealing with trauma, not only for our students, but for our employees. You know, in our society right now, we're dealing with a lot of big issues across our country. And we want to be able to have discussions not only with our students, but with our employees. And if you want to call it a check-in, a well check, we're working with our professionals here so that we not only can check with our students and their well-being, but we can also check with the adults in the building to make sure, because everybody's under a tremendous amount of stress, the anxiety level. We need to make sure everybody is comfortable and try to meet their needs when they come back.
You've got 6,000 teachers around.
6,000 teachers and 10,000 employees.
So again, you've got people at all stages of life, situations, all that. So again, I applaud what y'all are doing in terms of, again, making sure everybody is comfortable coming back as best they can be comfortable. Well, school opens on the 24th. Any thoughts in terms of how soon you make a decision as to what the plan, actually the schedule looks like? Is it the week before, 2 weeks before? We've got the framework, and we're beginning to understand how decisions are being made. When are things executed? Put it that way.
Well, I would say, and again, that will be Dr. Oyster's decision about when we make that decision. It's kind of like when you have a snow day and everybody's waiting around, like, when are they going to decide? When are they going to cancel school? Or when are they going to delay school? But we know this is a huge announcement and a decision. I would assume that it would be probably the teachers come back the week of the 10th. So I would think we would be close to making a decision or an announcement that week, probably, about what schedule we will actually be on come the 24th. I do know once we begin school that we will be looking at that DHEC document in terms of level of spread within the community. And a lot of people have asked questions about how quickly are you going to move from 0 to 1 to 2 to 5. And I know we will give people at least a week's notice before we move from one schedule to another, so they have time to make plans for their family and childcare.
It's definitely helpful, especially the business community in terms of workforce planning and things like that. That's, from our perspective, it's important. Again, with the plan, is there anything else in the plan that was released yesterday that you think is important, Whitney, Dr. Turner, that we should go over today?
A lot of people had questions about were we going to require masks or not require masks, or we're going to take temperatures or not. So as you see in the document, we are going to require students 2 through 12, grades 2 through 12, to wear masks unless they're capable of being socially distanced. We're going to ask that they wear masks on buses. And will that be difficult? Yes. If you've ever been around small children, that's very difficult. So that's one of the asks that we have of parents and community leaders, is that they begin having these conversations with children and young people about, as we're out in public now, when you go in retail establishments, when you go to the grocery store, many of them require masks. And so as you take your child into those environments, hopefully they're getting used to what it feels like and looks like to wear a mask, so that when they come back to school and we ask them to have a mask on, it's not a new concept for them, or it's not something that they would be afraid of. They understand it. So we will be able to have that conversation, but it's always better for the parent to have that conversation, or the caregiver to have that conversation with that child about what it's going to look like. What does it feel like? When you go back to school, you may be used to sitting at a table with 4 of your friends. There may be only 2 of you at a table this year, because you can't be close together. So those kind of conversations help children get ready psychologically for what they're going to face.
It's more and more important for the adults in the community to make sure they're practicing all this. So we can't ask the kids to do something we're not doing ourselves.
Correct.
And I would add to that as well, in addition to modeling and talking through what the physical environment may be like, we talk a lot, Hank, about what workforce needs are out there. We have those conversations all the time, and the feedback we're constantly getting from workforce is that, you know, we can work with students when they come to us on kind of the technical needs of the job. Obviously, there's some technical, you know, some industries that's very technical and there's specific training, but we're always being asked to help prepare students to have perseverance and grit and those interpersonal skills that are so needed to be successful in a work environment. And obviously this pandemic is extremely challenging for everybody involved, including our students. And there's a whole array of emotions that come with that, and there's reactions to all of this. And we know that no matter what plan, unfortunately, that we start at and we fluctuate throughout the year, that there is always going to be a portion of our community that is not going to feel comfortable with whatever that looks like, unfortunately. And but the idea of kind of adults processing this as adults, but still putting forth as much positivity with our students as possible to allow them to be as successful as they possibly can be in this coming school year, whatever that looks like. And that this is a real opportunity for us as adults in the community to model perseverance and all those interpersonal qualities that we are really trying to prepare our students for, to be good citizens and to be good in the workforce later on, that this is an opportunity for that. The other thing I would add is we released that parent resource guide. And so, but if hopefully most people are familiar, but if you go to the homepage of our website, there is a tab at the top for return to school, which details that flex attendance plan that Dr. Turner talked through with 0, 1, 2, and 5-day options. There's also a tab for the virtual program, which gives details about that. And on the return to school page, there is the summary, which you all have put on here on the screen, of our return to school plan. And then there's also a very in-depth, detailed document as well that includes everything from details around mask and social media, social distancing, expectations of e-learning and in-person instruction, to all of those kind of other details about special education, transportation, food services, extracurriculars, athletics, access to the building, health and safety protocols, so that parents and caregivers really can have as much information as possible when trying to make the decision moving forward.
So I think the business community has a role to play in at least getting the word out to their employees, making these resources available to their employees. And from my perspective, I think the HR community and plant managers, just business leaders in general, can set the tone and make sure people are fully informed. One thing we've talked about in earlier conversations is that the school district, while it's unified, is not a monolithic entity. You've got 16 high schools, and I can't tell you below that how many other facilities there are out there, but there are a lot. And the plan is not just that what happens at the district just happens at the district, but things can flex at the classroom level, things can flex at in the school level, and things may happen. A student may get sick, maybe have to be quarantined. Can you talk a little bit about how things might flow at different levels, I guess, Dr. Turner or Whitney?
Yeah, I would like to personalize it a little bit. I've had some conversation with parents who, you know, they're trying to understand. And I think, first of all, I always tell people I'm a father. Both my son and daughter are teachers. They teach in the Columbia area. My son teaches at a high school. My daughter teaches 4th grade in elementary school. So education is in our family. But when we're in education, we want the normalcy. We want children back in school. We know that's what's best. And so, like you said, we're not some faceless, monolithic bureaucracy who's making decisions without human feeling and understanding what families deal with. We have children, we have grandchildren, we understand what families are dealing with. I talk to my own son and daughter because they're teachers, and what their districts are doing and what they're facing and how they're going to handle it. I think the main thing that we're trying to do right now is just consistently and clearly communicate with our employees, because we're having to move so quickly in making these decisions. And like as we see the numbers of virtual enrollments continuing to go up, principals right now are in a little bit of state of shock when they realize how many teachers they may lose to have to go teach the virtual program. And so that would cause them to redo their entire schedule within that school. So we're moving quickly, but we're trying to think through all the scenarios and the ripple effects of our decisions as we make them, and we're getting stakeholder input. We have discussions with them, and we realize that when we make the decision, just like everyone else during this COVID crisis, it's an unknown. It's the first time we've dealt with it. There is no roadmap. There is no one who's done this before. And so we're making decisions we feel like is what's best for children and for our employees and families.
Very good. Speaking of, we are getting questions from these families and parents already in the chat. If I can just go ahead and bring a couple of these up to y'all, if that's okay. Are we ready for that?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, will we be able to enroll our children in the virtual learning option later in the year?
I think it's going to depend on the capacity that we have in order to do that. So after Monday is when we will know how many teachers we need to staff that virtual program. So if a family were to come to us, let's say in October, and say, I want to enroll in virtual, if we don't have the capacity in terms of the number of teachers, it would be a hard decision to say we continue to accept children into that program. Likewise, we have told families at some point we ask you to make a year commitment, but we realize there may be a change in circumstances where a family may want to say we want to come back to the brick and mortar. So that works both ways. If we have space in the brick and mortar where your child attends and you want to come back, we would have to make that decision on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, that's more than fair. Another related to that, someone asked, will the children that are enrolled in virtual school be issued Chromebooks?
Yes.
Okay.
One of the things, let me add about the LEAP days, the students who are enrolled in the virtual school are also, if they're in kindergarten through 8th grade, are also being invited those LEAP days to come to their school and pick up their Chromebooks and devices. So they are also included in that assessment. That's one of the things, unfortunately, our state has required is that those assessments, they have to be given face-to-face. So even though a family has chosen to be completely virtual, we've been told by the state, we have to bring these kids in, lay eyes on them, and give them this assessment. So that would be when we would issue the Chromebook.
Interesting.
The other piece to add about Chromebooks is previously, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, we started the rollout of one-to-one technology. And the reason we were able to even do e-learning in the way that we were able to in the kind of emergency stopgap this past spring so quickly was because all of our students, grades 3 through 12, already had devices. And for this coming school year, we will be deploying devices for the lower grades as well.
So related to that, someone asked, do you have a plan for the technology that will be used for live streaming? So I guess that takes care of most of that question.
Yes.
Classroom live stream component. But.
We have purchased, like I said, it will be beefed up more than it was in the spring. And we've purchased some software that will enable a better, if you want to call it, dialogue between the student and teacher in terms of the curriculum platform, the way that the teachers actually access the curriculum. So that's one thing that we did not have in the spring that we will have in place with the virtual program when we start in August.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm just going down the list here.
While you're reading that, let me also say that a lot of people had concerns about families who did not have connectivity. So we have purchased hotspots for families who do not have connectivity. So if they've chosen virtual or if we're completely on a zero with e-learning, there will be opportunities for families to, you want to say, check out a hotspot and take it to their home so that they would have access.
It's fantastic. I apologize. Will the schools have masks on hand in case a student forgets to bring one?
We will have masks on hand on the buses, and we will also have them in the schools, but we're asking the parents to please provide masks for their children. And they can be, we just ask them to be cloth mask, or it could be the kind that we see so commonly around. But we will have masks if a child forgets theirs or loses theirs or tears theirs, or, you know, if a child, you know, runs it under the water and gets it wet, and, you know, that's not going to become an issue. We'll have plenty available.
Okay. In terms of temperature checking of students, visitors, teachers, what's the policy on that?
All adults will have a temperature check every day and will be screened with screening questions in terms of their symptoms, have they been around anybody who's been tested for COVID positive or quarantine. Students will be, we're asking students and families to kind of self-monitor if they have symptoms, cough, fever. Don't send your child to school that day. We're not doing temperature checks of every student when they walk in the building. If a child does feel unwell, they will go to every school we have has a nurse. They will go to the nurse's station, and the nurses will be able to take their temperature when they come into the nurse's station.
Very good. So if, let's see. Someone asked if there's a website we can check for the DHEC community spread information that you'll be using to determine attendance plans, or will you post that on your website on a regular basis, or will they need to go somewhere else to look at that?
If they just go to the DHEC site and go under their COVID link, there's all kind of information on there, but sometimes they move things around. You kind of like, what have you done with it? If you go under childcare and schools, you go under that tab, and then you continue to drill down, and you'll find it by county.
Okay. Very good. So what else would a parent, an employer need to know, do you think, to make an informed decision? Virtual school versus in-person school, or what should they be expecting, do you think, for the fall? Kind of broad question.
That is a good question. I think they will be pleasantly surprised, even if we open on a 0, about the rigor of what we lay out for our students. And sometimes people think that that's a scary word, but what we had in the spring was not rigorous. What we did was tried to maintain. It did not introduce a lot of new content, but it will be rigorous. Grades will be given, assessments will be given, students will be held accountable, attendance will be taken. And the people say, well, how do you take attendance if they're not in school? Well, that's taken whether or not they engage with the teacher that day. If there's no engagement, no contact. And that was another issue that came up across our state that made a lot of headlines about, we lost so many students during this pandemic. Out of our 75,000, we had 54 that we could not contact. And we think many of those moved. And we could not contact, those 54 students out of the 75,000 that we have. But this year we will begin, we did in the spring as well, but we will have dedicated social workers going to their homes if they do not engage with us.
Very strong. That's a very low percentage anyway, 54 out of 75,000. That is absolutely incredible that you could keep track of that many students and know what's happening all that time. From the community's perspective, Whitney, we talk about different resources that are needed in the community. We know childcare is a big issue. For your staff, for the business community in general, anything else from your perspective in terms of community need that you see arising out of this return to school plan and things we should be paying attention to?
Sure. For an employer standpoint, you and I had some conversations with some specific employer groups last week, and I'm continuing to work with a lot of companies around the community. And if there's anyone on this call that wants to schedule something after this, happy to talk through the plan and try to figure out what the implications may be at your business level. One of the recommendations we made was, once you understand the flex attendance plan options and how those decisions are made, the potential to poll your own employees to understand how many of your employees have children that are school aged and what color groups they fall on, and understanding what their potential scheduling implications may be from this. In some, we recognize in some businesses, there's the ability to be flexible with that, and in others, there is not. So that is not, that's easier said than done. But I think where there's the ability to be flexible, please do that, and try to alleviate whatever strain on your employees that you can, because as we mentioned, that stress is going to trickle over from employee into the parent role, which will then trickle over to students. And this is going to be a stressful thing for all of us, students and teachers and staff and parents and employers and everybody in the community. It has been, and unfortunately will continue to be that way. And I think just really understanding that, our number one priority is to get kids back in school 5 days a week as quickly as it's safe to do so, and to provide an environment where students can be as successful as they possibly can be, and an environment where teachers can be as successful and staff can be as successful as possible in teaching and supporting those students.
I've gotten a couple of extra good questions that have come in just in the last minute or so I would like to bring up before we wrap up in a few minutes. If a student has to go into quarantine, how does that impact their attendance and how they, interface with the school or schoolwork and that sort of thing?
We had some guidance again on that DHEC website. They've issued guidance on how we would determine, because some people have had this notion that if you have a positive case in a school that you would close the whole school. Well, that's not what they're recommending.
Right.
What they're recommending is if a child tests positive, that the teacher or whomever is monitoring that would say, well, no one was within 6 feet of that child for more than 15 minutes. So only that child would need to go home for 14 days. And they would be under a medical excuse. They would continue to get instruction and material sent to them to work on while they're out, but those days would be excused for medical reasons. Now, if you had another child who was close to them, and let's say you had some first graders who were playing and they got together and were more 15 minutes or more, and one of them tested positive, the one who was with them for more than 15 minutes would also have to be told to go home for 14 days to make sure they were symptom-free when they came back or were negative. So the whole class will not be sent home. It will only be people who are close to that one person should we have a positive case, or in case of the teacher, were there any other adults or children within proximity to that teacher for more than 15 minutes without mask on. That's what DHEC is saying at this time.
Okay. And you'll have, I know that you'll have staff in the classrooms cleaning, you'll have spray going, you'll be doing all those sorts of things throughout the day and each and every day. So,
And to that point, that some of that is covered in the reopening of schools document. We've been doing a series of Facebook of live events this week with some of our team members. So yesterday we had the head of academics and the head of special education both did Facebook Live, which are obviously accessible later on Facebook if anyone wants to go back and watch those. And today at 2, we had somebody speaking about transportation, and we're going to have, I believe today also was healthcare services for students and staff. And then tomorrow is about our facilities cleaning and disinfecting as well. So because those topic areas were so obviously at the top of everyone's mind, we've done some in-depth interviews there with some of our leadership team members. So please access those via our Facebook page as well for some information there.
Perfect.
Hank, I forgot to mention in terms of the color assignment based on the first letter of the last name, we do have a process where people can ask or request to be changed from blue to red because they would rather, it's easier for them to come on a Tuesday rather than a Monday, or from red to green based on, we understand not all children in the same household have the same last name. We understand that you may have childcare issues, work issues. So there is a process for people to fill out a form and request to be assigned to a different color group.
Very good. That's helpful. Very strong question here. I like this. How can we help teachers in this moment? This needs to be more than Starbucks gift cards.
Amen.
So comments on that.
I can tell you over the last few weeks, teachers have really felt not appreciated in our state. There have been some things that have gone on in our state and across our country that have made teachers feel like people really don't appreciate what they do. And I think when you see, just email your teachers or former teachers and let them know that you appreciate what they've done, you understand, or you may not understand the amount of work and dedication it takes to be a teacher. There's a reason we have a shortage. There's a reason we have a critical shortage of people wanting to go into education. And right now, they're not feeling a lot of love coming out of Columbia or out of Washington. So if you or your employees could just send teachers a thank you note, just send them an email to say, thank you for working with my child. You may have had the teacher 3 years ago. It will mean the world to them.
Yeah, I would second that. I think when we had to close down in an emergency, you know, we all saw all the Facebook images where it was like, I would pay my teacher $1 million right now, you know, and that sort of thing. And I think the appreciation level was really high at that point. And I think people really realized how much our teachers do, obviously, to support students academically, but also emotionally and developmentally in all the different ways, because that was, you know, not present. And I think that same level of appreciation is what creates an urgency to get back to school. But by recognizing that just like everyone else, they are also human and have their own personal circumstances. They have to take in consideration their own personal health. And we as a district are subject to challenges just like the workforce in terms of, you know, much as we were trying to flatten the curve from a healthcare perspective and a capacity standpoint when all this started, as we open up school and what that looks like, we have to keep in mind that rate of exposure for our teachers is at a manageable rate where we don't end up with a lot of our workforce out due to sickness, because we wouldn't be able to then appropriately supervise schools and to then be successful academically. So there is a real need to support and understand those needs. And Dr. Turner, you said it very well, kind of just the need to show appreciation for all of those obstacles right now.
And I think we're coming up on 45 minutes, I think, with this presentation. And my last question, I think you may have just addressed. You know, are there closing words or takeaways you'd like to share with the audience? How can we support Greenville County Schools? So anything else from your perspective you'd like to somewhat semi-close with?
We just ask for people to be patient with us as we make decisions and understand that our motive is really to do what's best for children and also our employees, that we get it. We understand that you all as business owners and our business community want your employees back 5 days a week, and many of them have childcare issues. We know that. We understand that. We're sympathetic to that. But at the same time, we're trying to make decisions based on the science and the health care for not only the children, but the adults who work with those children on a daily basis.
Very good. So if we haven't gotten to all the questions, I would just say attendees can send them to info@greenville.k12.sc.us. Call 864-355-3100 and say Service Center. For the virtual program specifically, you can send questions to gsvirtual@greenville.k12.sc.us. And I think all this should have been placed in the chat. And we'll send the questions to you, Whitney and Scott, as well. So we know who's asked which questions. So we'll make sure that what we haven't touched on get answered. Is that okay with y'all?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. So first, again, thank you, Dr. Turner. Thank you, Whitney, and all the attendees who've been with us today. This recording will be shared on the Chamber's website. It'll be sent to the attendees. A link will be sent to the attendees along with a survey. And this is part of an ongoing series. And next week, we'll be hosting Thomas Broadus and Beau Rogers with Infinity Marketing to talk about adapting to changing customer needs. So we take time at the end of every call to kind of remind everybody, you know, please do your part in helping stop the spread of coronavirus. So mask up when you can and social distance when you can, when it's appropriate. Let's do all our part for our neighbors. Stay safe, be well, and have a great day. Thank you.